Why do you think we need the journal on digital television?
Well, the journal was founded 5 years ago to look at the process of whole countries turning themselves over to digital television. In other words, closing down analog terrestrial television and replacing it with digital transmission and multi-channel and the whole convergence with the internet, which broadcasting has been doing. And it was a process that was clearly going on over a period of years, with some countries starting early and others following later. And it was going to go on for many years, probably across the whole globe. And so there was both a lot of knowledge to gather and, perhaps even more importantly, a lot of knowledge to transmit from one country to another. So it was fundamental that the journal was an international one. And so that was its purpose, really, to look at the process of the transition of countries to digital television and to communicate findings and insights from that process, and then obviously to look at what happens at the end of the process and what kind of television is emerging.
Can you summarise the overall objectives of the journal?
Well, it's intended to appeal to and draw writers from both the academic community and professionals engaged in the area who are interested in serious research. And that probably means particularly people working for regulatory bodies or senior management in either in governments or in broadcasting organisations. And the objective really was to study in depth how a country managed the transition. One of the sort of central issues related to the politics of that decision. If you're going to turn around to all your citizens and say, you have to buy yourself some new television equipment at your own expense and you're going to lose what you've got and have grown up with all your lives. It's, you swallow twice before you announce that as a politician. So there were a lot of issues about how you actually manage it, and then capturing that knowledge and spotting the differences between how one country managed it and another, and whether these were differences that related to timing or to the nature of the particular economy of the country, and how far you could draw some general principles that were different from things that were more national variables.
Has the original mission of the journal developed in any way since its creation?
Yes, one of the ways in which it's developed has been by broadening the international range, but particularly the number of countries from which we've drawn contributors. I mean, clearly at the beginning, only a small number of countries had completed the transition. Several others were in the process. But by 2012, 2013, about 30 countries had completed the transition entirely, and the number that had started was just too big to count. It had started almost everywhere in North and South America, certainly in Europe and in the Far East as well, Australia, New Zealand. And so we were beginning to see greater diversity, a greater range of experience, and above all, a greater breadth.
Why did you choose Intellect to be your publisher?
Well, there was a bit of history in that I'd written a book about digital television which Intellect had published, so it was a company I knew, and I knew that it published journals, and I knew that it published journals in the field of media studies, film studies, and in this area. So in that sense, it was a logical door for me to knock on. I wasn't sure when I first had the idea that there would be a place in the world of journals for something as specialised as this, but there was.
What are the future aims of the journal?
Well, I think as the process advances, more and more of our readers and indeed our authors are in countries that have completed the process of switching the whole country from analog to digital television. And so the agenda is moving much more now to, well, what emerges when you've got digital television, in what respects is it different? What difference does it make to regulation? And then in particular the convergence with the internet, because clearly there's a kind of spectrum of audio-visual material available to people now to see in their home, some of which one might have labelled clearly as being television in the past, some of which one might have labelled as websites, but then there's a lot of things in between, on things like YouTube and all sorts of videos that are circulating, and the way in which that market and the regulation of that market develops and what the experience is like for the viewer once digitisation has gone through is increasingly centre stage.